So when I slow myself down, there are reasons. I had to look at the reasons why I was so impulsive and why I was running back to these people and why I felt I needed them in my life. And so once I started recognizing the real truth of the situation of the people, and and I recognize they're giving. This is I don't know if you've been watching me for since I started. You're gonna recognize. There's people who will give you like a chocolate bar while you're giving them roasted chicken. And the nutrients are extremely different, right? And the value, like buying a chocolate bar from the store off the counter from a factory, is very different than taking the time to go pick up a chicken. Maybe you're making some stuffing. You're probably gonna make some roasted veggies. You're gonna put some herbs and stuff on the skin. You're gonna put some love into that chicken. And so some people will just like say, well, I gave you something, but it's like, okay, but like your gift is giving me diabetes, and my chicken is giving you, nurturing, nourishment, comfort, right? It's very different. And so I had to start looking at who was giving to me and why, and what were the expectations in those exchanges. And so you have to slow that down to ask the questions. So if you're just racing all over the place, and the problem with what I had with like different beliefs, and I had beliefs that had been put into me as a child that I was raised with, so it seemed like second nature, like it was just no big deal, and it was my norm. And I had to start when I realized my life was really I was gonna say sucky, but it sucked. It just sucked. Like there's no softness on it. My life sucked, and I knew there was something about my parents because I didn't like being around them. They made me feel like I was a burden, but they're also very burdening to me because I felt like I could see stuff within them, and it felt like I felt like I was their crutch, and I didn't want to leave them because they felt very like victimy, like very helpless and vulnerable. But and in some ways, my mom, I do feel like she was more of a victim than my father, but at the same time, she still backed his behavior, and I did that when I was younger too. Like I backed the kid's dad bad behavior because I just didn't think that I could say no. And even though I had more empowerment than my mom did, I still fell under that sort of like pressure to submit. And I didn't feel like I could speak up for myself because I didn't have practice in the past. I was raised as a child to be obedient and submissive and quiet, and I could softly offer something, but there's no way I could stand my ground and still not get some sort of punishment from my adult partner. That's a weird, when you say it out loud, it's weird, right? And so even with my parents, like my dad was a tornado. He was angry almost all the time, and then when he wasn't angry, he expected us just to flip on the switch and be happy and feel connected to him and cuddle with him on Saturday mornings. And like he would make pancakes on Saturdays, so like that is his contribution, and that made him the good guy because who doesn't want to eat pancakes? But it was my mom during the work week who had to cook the meals, do the dishes, and get the kids to try to eat their food that they didn't want to eat. Because I remember sitting at the table chewing on this piece of overcooked meat until I'd finished it. That is one of my childhood memories. I'm like, this, I don't know if, I think it was a pork chop. I don't even know. But I just remember she used to overcook. She was so scared. I know at that time there was like a scare based on like undercooked meat. And so like she used to overcook everything. And so we'd be sitting there, chewing and chewing and chewing. Um, and so my dad, even though he was like the aggressive tornado, he liked to be the fun parent. And like she was the one to be made the bad guy because she was the responsible one. And she was the one, like he would make rules, and she was the one who was required to like hold us to that. And when we didn't listen to her, then he would come in and be like aggressive. But like it was like based out of fear. It was fast, emotional, fearful, fear-mongering energy. Like if you don't do this, I'm going to do this. And if you don't do that, I'm gonna, this is like, and I realize there's softer versions of people who do this where they do different things about, Santa Claus and, the Easter. I did this with the Easter Bunny. Like, I remember my kid was younger and he wasn't listening, and I told him, like, there was the Easter Bunny. We lived in the country, and there was tons of bunnies then. And I said, if you don't do what you're told, like that, there's the Easter Bunny and he's seen what you're doing, and so you need to go take your bath, eat your supper, whatever the situation was, or else he's going to go back and tell the Easter Bunny that you're not behaving. And that's not discipline. That's fear. And so telling the kids, like, if you don't listen, Santa Claus isn't going to bring you presents, that's still fear, you know? And so, like, a lot of these things are just woven into today's world and society and made to be kind of lighthearted and, you know, fun. But, like, fear is not fun. And you shouldn't have to put your kid into a fear mindset in order to get them to do what they need to do. So, what I had to do when I moved from fear into, like, slower, more thoughtful energy, I had to stop the action of the impulsive nature and the fear. You know, this is when I started recognizing the ex that I was with, like, he was very inappropriate with other women, and he didn't care how that made me feel, and he tried to make it feel like I was the issue, when in reality he was doing this intentionally, and he had been doing this for a long time, and I believe he's still doing this. I don't know. I haven't talked to him since 2021, but we've been on and off for 8 years, and so, like, 8 years, if you haven't figured this out at this point, to me, I don't have great hopes in people. It's not like it's a lack of communication. I was very clear, and so that's another thing with this fast energy too. A lot of people will use their emotions, their emotional place against you, to get you to conform to what they need you to do. And so, like, they'll get loud, you know, they'll get aggressive, they'll get upset, they'll try to be like, they'll try to shock you into freezing, with humiliation and shame, and they'll try to make you the problem, and they'll really like, that projection they really put on you is a form of emotional abuse, because and it's also mental abuse at the same time, because they're trying to gaslight you into believe like you're the issue, when in reality, you're the furthest thing from the issue. Now, it's not, as an adult, we do have to look at ourselves, and like I said, like, we have to slow things down to get ourselves out of this cycle, because as an adult now, like, once you start seeing it, you're the one who has to deal with it. Your kids are, you know, if you have kids, that they're at the hands of this too, so it's not just you, it's like your kids. And so I had to start realizing where, like, you know, the men at the time, it was this ex, where, you know, I just felt like he was not treating me well at all. And I was sick of his excuses, and I was sick of being sad all the time. And so that's where it really started with me, with my healing journey, is I was so sick of the kid's dad, my dad, and this ex. Who said he was going to work on his money, and that's why he didn't want to work on our relationship, but he was fine to have sex at the same time, but he didn't want to be a partner, like an equal giving partner. And he wanted what he wanted when he wanted it, but he didn't have any sort of investment or commitment. It was very fast energy. He was in his fast, impulsive energy. And yeah, I just got to the point where I realized, like, this is not good for my kids. This is not good for me. I thought this is just how men are. And I had to start realizing, like, this is how toxic men are. And it started with, like, where I was in that sort of extreme where I thought, like, men suck, but then I realized, like, women suck too. And so I'll do a different video about that. But this impulsive energy, like, you have to slow it down, because it is emotional in the way that, like, your emotions are being triggered, and you're feeling like you don't have something. But in reality, everything is within you if you want to create it, if you want to develop it within yourself. So I had to start pausing before repeating. I had to take time. If someone doesn't want to be with you, and they don't want to invest with you properly and fairly, and you can feel something's off, and you communicate that, and they're not choosing to recognize that and quickly change that, that person is quite comfortable with the dynamic and the exchange that's happening, and they have no intention of changing it. And it's not that we're all going to agree on everything. We're, like, me and my kids, we have different ideas of how things should work, and so sometimes we have to agree to disagree at certain times. But we're both not giving then. Like, we're just giving what the other one agrees on, and we just have to leave it at that until, you know, I realize, like, sometimes my kids can't appreciate, like, my experiences I've been through, because, you know, when I was at that age, I thought I knew more than I did too. And so, like, sometimes you have to hit some rock bottoms, some false rock bottoms, because not every rock bottom is the final one. It can get worse, it can get lower, it can get more traumatizing, right? And so I just sit here, I give them my advice when it's welcomed, and if it's not, then it's just not. And so, like, I'll be here when they're ready, but, like, those are my kids. It's very different than an adult and trying to parent an adult. And so when I recognized these men were not willing to give to me, I started like distancing myself. I was a single mom, and then that's when I noticed like the women were equally as toxic and emotionally damaging as the men, because for it's a lot of these situations, they were friendly to my face. It was very extreme. It was like either really friendly or really angry, and it would be like, you know, they'd spend a lot of time with me at first, but then also it'd be, we'd go months without spending any time. This isn't about having a busy lifestyle. That's not what this is about. I'm a single mom. If I can make time as a single parent, which I shouldn't have, I was making time for all the wrong people. And so, but as a single mom, if I can find a way to make time for these people, it's like I was overly invested in them and they were so not invested in me. And so when I tied into like feeling that they had something that I needed, I started to learn how to be more independent, and that was really painful to experience because there's so many challenges, and it felt like wave after wave after wave of challenges. But it's because I had taken on way too much, and I was doing too much because I didn't feel enough. And these people were exploiting that aspect of me, feeling like I can do that, I can do that, I can do this, and it's because that's how I was raised to be. And so I had to learn how to start taking things off my plate, and that was other people's responsibilities who were quite capable of creating that change for themselves or doing that responsibility on their own. I had to take things off my plate were the judgments of other people who, you know, had never walked my path, never had the intention of walking my path, but wanted to tell me how to do it, which is fucked up because it's like somebody playing a basketball game on the sidelines trying to tell you how to shoot a hoop, and they've barely picked up a basketball and don't know the pressure of being in the game, in action, and they're going to try to tell you, well, you should have shot it like this, you should have done this. Well, let me tell you, let's change spots and you tell me and let's see your results. And they'll never do that. They're never going to put themselves in your shoes. And that's, it's so interesting. So like I just had so many people, and these are things I've done settling videos where you think you've changed something within your life, like an aspect of it, of settling, of, you know, caring what people think. And I found that I still did care what people think to a different degree. And so like you just keep revising yourself. And I had to get to the point where I no longer feel emotion towards people and what they think of me. And it feels lighter, it feels better, and then it's so much easier to walk away from individuals. And my boundaries have been tested with this as well, because at first, like if you watch my other videos, I mentioned about, like, you know, having boundaries with family was easier, but when you're like working with people and you have to show up every day and fake, you know, there's like a fakeness that is required to show up in some of these workplaces. And when I stopped faking it, I became more of a target. When I pulled back my energy, I became more of a target for bullying on a large scale. I'm going to do a video about that at some point, where I was working for 2 years and I experienced sexual abuse. I experienced gang stalking by girls, women, whatever. They're women age, but they're girls, and I don't even say girls. I would say monsters, because nobody does that. The people who need to go out of their way to target people and make their life miserable, you're not a human at this point. Like, you're a monster inside. And they could change if they really want to. It's not my responsibility. I really don't care anymore. See, I just don't care. Before, I used to really care about these people, and I wanted to leave, like, you know, a path for them, you know, that they could follow, and if they ever decide to change, they could do it. Now I'm kind of at the point, not even kind of, I'm just like, it's just not my responsibility anymore to coddle these people. You know, I found a way, they can too. And like when I place these videos for content, it is to help people who are genuinely looking to change. You know, you got to plant seeds to grow a plant, so you can't just expect, you know, it's got to start somewhere. And even I've noticed with my kids, like they're growing faster than some of these adults that I've experienced in life. And it's just wild to me that some of my, you know, these kids that are like early 20s can have a concept and understanding certain things, and yet these adults of like that are 50 give or take years old cannot understand common courtesy and common sense. You know, and I'm still learning from my kids too, and that's a great thing. Like, we can learn from each other, and sometimes it's just like, well, no, I think you're still wrong, and that's okay too, right? But it's just the idea that there's a conversation that's continuing, and that there's a respect there, and there's a want to understand. I want to understand you. I don't want to hurt you. And that's not what I didn't, you know, I never received that from these individuals, and you just won't, because they just don't care for a different reason. So like I had to move from overly emotional to more narcissistic, and I feel like I'm getting to a happier place where I'm in the middle, where, you know what, the people that choose to invest in me, I can invest in them and care for, you know. And the thing is too, is like, it took me a level, like a very high level of painful truth not just me and how I was continuing to show up, but with them too. So there's times where a lot of people don't like this, but um, like, you don't deserve the abuse, but at some point, because the abuse happened when you're a child, nobody deserves that. But as an adult, we have to become aware of the trauma that we endured and the patterns that it created and the bad habits and the mindsets that we now have. And so we have to revise those. We have to undo them and relearn something else. And it is a painful experience. And that's why I do post this, because I hope that if I can help somebody like work their way through that, like, then hopefully that will, support them through a challenge and trauma life that I did not have support through. I had very limited. I had some support. I don't like to say I did everything by myself, because I did have some support here and there. But I've had a very hermited lifestyle, very alone. Outside of my kids, I don't speak to many people at all. And I can't remember the last time I actually had a real friend where I could trust them and have a real consistent, deep connection to somebody. Outside of my kids, I have not experienced that. In my life, I have not experienced that, because the people of the past I had to release because they couldn't. They were just surface level, opportunistic. So the more you can work, and so like for me, working my way through those emotions, not only did I have to recognize what I was doing to continue these patterns in my life with these people and with even the way I was living life, I also had to recognize what I was looking for when I kept reaching out to people that were cruel and just inconsiderate and unkind, right? And so I had to look at why am I reaching out? Okay, so like I was ignoring red flags. I was thinking that these people had something that I could build with, and if I paid attention to the red flags, I'd realize no, that's not them. And like I said, I had to some judgments are required, and I don't know if I'm using the right term for that, but like, you have to look at someone and say, like, are you capable? And are we compatible? Like, do you know how to respect? Do you have common courtesy? So like, the people that I was like making excuses for were people who I thought could be on the same level as me, but when I realized like the way they handle conflict and like miscommunication, that is not someone I want to be around. And I also have to look at like the path I was walking. Did these people support that path? Were they doing something similar? Because to me, when I'm going to be healthy and I'm going to be wealthy, I'm not hanging around people who are smoking cigarettes, drinking alcohol, eating sugar, and eating junk food. I'm just not. And while it's not that I don't fall back on those things once in a while, because I'm still trying to revise, I'm not quite there yet where I can afford all the food that I want. And so while I'm still in transition, I am heavily in a growth era of my life. And so for me, it's high risk behavior to be hanging around these people, because when you're so far and they're so far back in their levels of like developing themselves and growing, it can be really dangerous, because like, people have bad habits and they're very codependent, and they need you to kind of hold their hand in times where you don't have time to hold someone's hands. And it's not my responsibility. Like, if you're not paying me for a coaching session, I don't owe you anything except for a kind exchange. And then some of those kind exchanges get twisted, and now they're trying to associate themselves with you when we really don't have anything in depth. And so this is where I've had to really still continue to be independent on my path, because I've recognized like where you want to bring people with you because you see potential in them. If they can't see their potential, but they only see what they can take from you in order to elevate themselves, but they don't know how to elevate their own selves, that is not something I'm willing to invest in. I love offering help for other people to do what they got to do, but there are some times where just if I'm not in a position, and you got to think, like, when you're healing, when you're working and you're working through those emotions, you're grieving what you didn't receive, and now you actually have to learn it yourself amongst a bunch of people who are trying to target you and isolate you and suppress you and stop you from growing. That's a lot to put on a person. That's a lot. And I also have 2 children. I'm a single parent. The kids' families on both sides have abandoned and discarded because we didn't want to play by their fucked up, messed up rules. And they didn't want to acknowledge the dad for being a deadbeat, and they didn't want to acknowledge their their toxic behavior towards me. So I had to distance myself and put up boundaries. And like with those boundaries, they said, no, we're not willing to live our life by your rules, but they expect me to live my life by their rules. It's really messed up. And so, yeah, when I started recognizing that people just weren't willing to, they expected me to pull me across my line and across my boundaries, but when I needed something from them, just like common decency, it was like out of the picture. It was like, oh, how dare you? You're so rude. I can't believe I don't do that. Yeah, you do. That's who you are. And I've had to come into painful truths of where when you're overly emotional, you are emotionally unavailable to your kids. And so if you can't see that, then your kids are never going to feel safe coming to you to talk to you, because they already feel like you can't even handle your own life right now. How are you going to handle their issues? And so I had to recognize, like, I had been emotionally unavailable to my kids throughout all this period of time of dealing with these people who were creating reactional abuse through their financial abuse, through their gaslighting, through emotional manipulation. And so like that really, so to move from your emotional mind to your logical mind, I had to play devil's advocate for one, because it wasn't enough that I was tolerating this behavior. I had to put my kids, like if my kids were gonna experience that, like how would I feel? And so like I had to learn, how am I going to do, if I don't know how to deal with this, how can I teach my kids how to deal with this? And they're learning on their own accord, but at the same time I felt it's my responsibility as a parent to teach my kids this stuff, to have hands-on experience, to say this works, this does not, things like that, because we're meant to have parents that guide us and support us. And if you can't even guide and support yourself, how are you going to do that for your kids? And so that was also my motivation to keep working, was not just my kids, but then at some point it got to the point where like, I deserve this too. I deserve to be treated a certain way, and I deserve to, the things that I want to give to other people, I deserve those back. And so I had to stop giving my time and resources and energy away to people. I had to start giving that to myself. And the longer I took from the people who were wishy-washy about me, and you can feel the anxiety with those connections, because you feel like you don't say the things that you really want to say, because it doesn't feel safe to say that. The more I got distance from that, the more pissed off I got, because I was like, look how much I've given to these people. It's going to piss you off. You need to get to that. Not resentment, because resentment is still disempowerment. In order to be empowered, you need to be able to take action and stop giving to them and start taking for yourself. And that means taking what you're creating. So like for me, I'm going to grow a garden. I'm going to grow vegetables and fruits. So it's going to be for me and mine first. And if I have leftovers, then I can give it to other people. But even at that point, I want to start selling stuff, because it took me time and effort and my property that I pay for to grow those things. And so why should I just give it away free? Yes, free is helpful for certain seasons. Sometimes you need help, but at some time you have to build your own business and start, if you're not in a position to give quite yet, it's not like you're never going to give. And so I had to recognize, like, certain people with different belief systems were causing me emotional distress as well, because there was an expectation out of me when I was like so down and out already. And it's like, I'm already doing all this stuff and now you want more. Like, how do you not see how that's an issue? And so it was like, these two-parent households were looking at me as a one parent, expecting the same things out of me. And I'm like, you're delusional. And then I had to realize, like, I had placed those same expectations on myself, and I was delusional. So the painful truth is, people are treating you this way, but you could also be treating yourself this way as well. And so I had to get clarity. When that clarity comes, it's usually because I spent so much time on my own, where I've just had so much waves of pain, and like things are not happening the way I thought they would. My expectations are not being met. My expectations were too high sometimes. I was doing too much for too little. I was spending time doing things I didn't even want to be doing. I'm like, why am I even doing this? I don't even want to. Do I even enjoy this? Like, it's like this, it's one thing with the cards. I enjoy the cards, but it's not really anything. Like, I wasn't getting anywhere with it. And in a way that, like, it caused more confusion. And it just, I was tied into, like, the base of those readings are what I actually know and learn through my life experience, not through cards. I've never relied on cards to make a decision. And I know a lot of people do rely on cards to make a decision. I find that that's not, it can be helpful to kind of point you in the right direction, but I've never been like, the cards mean this. Now, I have had other situations where I thought something was happening within my body. And because of the spiritual element that I was in at the time, it did make it, and it wasn't just that, it was what I was reading on the internet and other people's experiences, but it was other people's experiences as well. It was my experiences with doctors, and it got me to the point where I actually at one point thought I was pregnant, and this was a very confusing time in my life because it felt like when I had a baby, and that's what it felt like, and the doctors were saying, no, you're not, but they also weren't giving me any other answers. So like it really sent me into that sort of emotional energy because I was scared and I didn't have any answers. And the professionals that are supposed to, if it's not this, then what else is it? Why aren't you guiding me to something else? And if it was just like, it ended up being like a nutrition deficiency and like parasites, right? So like that seems like a simple solution. Why throughout a year I dealt with these doctors, a number of doctors, why throughout that year did you not ever just start at the bottom and say, I think this could be this? Why not start out simple? Like I never got the answer from these professional doctors. So you can imagine, like, while this was confusing and emotional at the time, it was really helpful in getting me to be more independent for my health, because I recognize there's a lot of misinformation out there, and it's same with emotions and illnesses associated with emotions like depression, like anxiety. People write these off as different excuses for why we're experiencing these, and so you can just take a pill and alleviate it. But to me, I had to ask, why was I experiencing depression and ADHD slash anxiety and things like that. And when I found out it was the life I was living and the people I was around and the belief systems I was carrying and holding on to, that's why I had the depression and anxiety and the ADHD. So like a pill's not going to fix that. It's in your mind. You got to figure out, why are you doing what you're doing? And you know, I was just, you know, when I look back, I realized a lot of my life was so sad. I was so unsatisfied, and I'm still working through that. Like it's still, I'm having to, it doesn't just because you realize these epiphanies, life doesn't change. You have to clean up the mess that you created. And that's emotional, and that's where the frustration comes in, and that's emotional because you're just like impatient. You're like, why is this taking so long? Like, because you've worked so hard in your life emotionally, carrying these burdens of other people's bad behaviors and expectations and judgments and belief systems that never worked. They never did work. And now you're having to like regrow yourself, almost like from birth, redeveloping those years of 0 to 5 years, but now as an adult. And I see other people doing this as well, and I think they're missing the mark because I see people like kind of revel in like a silly sort of childish physical movement, like they're going back to their childhood years, but it's still, to me, that still feels performative. And whether it's part of their process, that could be. I'm just, on my experience, that still feels, because it still feels performative. It still feels like they're pretending to be happy, but like when a camera's on, the expectation is like people know they're being recorded. So it's like, it's not authentic to me. That's just my experience. And while I'm not saying they've done the work, they've done some work, but I think they stopped and they just haven't. To me, getting in touch with your authenticity in your inner child is realizing that from the years of 0 to 5, you should have been developed in the way that you are curious, you're creative, you're encouraged to try new things, even if it doesn't work out. And it doesn't mean it's a no. It just may mean it's not a right now. And hey, get back at it. Or, I mean, you're disappointed, but did you really want to go after that? Yes. Okay, well, let's keep working on it. Do you really enjoy this? No. Okay, then let's try something else out. Like, it's not about quitting. It's not about freezing that child in trauma because you as a parent can't handle that they're growing and you're not. Like, it's so messed up when you look at it. Like, when you have parents that don't want you to do better than them and they're competitive with you, that is a messed up thing. I've always wanted my kids to do better than me, more than me. And so the idea of like a parent not wanting that for their kid is messed up. I can't, there's some things you're just never going to acknowledge. And while I still have emotion attached to certain things, it's the emotions that are keeping you in unhealthy situations, patterns. That's what I'm talking about. It's not like you're never going to have emotion. Emotion is natural. It's where it's taking over your life and it's causing you to make decisions that are not the best for you. You know, even overwhelmingly happy feelings. Like, I remember I used to try to fake it to make it, where I was like, I'm going to like be overly invested in winning this like home lottery, and I would go to the other side and I would become overly excited, and I would be, because that's what I was learning in spirituality, was manifesting meant you had to feel it like you're living in it, and that was delusional. I'm not living in a home lottery. I don't have my, even though it comes with money, like to me, I'm like, I couldn't manage my own tiny home right now, let alone a mansion. Like that would be overwhelming to me in my system. And then I realized also, like, they're all new builds, and you'd have to endure like the constant construction and noise. A lot of these things are not built with quality and incision in mind. And the thing is, a lot of them are environments I don't want to be in. And so like I had to stop and be like, why am I trying to manifest a mansion when I don't even have the means to like manage it? Like I had to work on my housekeeping skills. I had to work on moderating where I spend my time and my money. And at the time, there were so many people I wanted to bring there with me, and they were the ones that were abusing me and were using and abusing me and not giving back in a fair manner. So they would have just, you know, had I invited them into that home, they would have just destroyed the home or destroyed me. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like I had to learn who was for me and who was not. And so it's also changed like my perspective on like what I really wanted to go after in life. And like some of these homes are beautiful, but like you got to think the work that is involved, the money that you're going to have to make. And it's not to put a cap on your money, but it's also realizing how hard you do have to work to get your money. And that's why the idea is to do something that you love. So, or at least if you don't do something that you love, at least have elements of life that you love while you're building your business. Because, if you're good at something, that can be really rewarding too. I think, I don't know if I would cap it just at like having a passion, but sometimes if you're really good at something and you get a reward, I think that could potentially be the same as like a passion project. So I'm looking at that as well for myself and revising how I want to make my money, because there are some things where I'm just like, this is going to take way longer than I thought. And, some things are just not popular and some things are. And like, you got to look, for me, when I watch, I don't know that it's my algorithm, but it's hard to find content done by somebody who has actually walked that full path and not stopped early and just kind of filled in the ending with what they thought that would look like without actually experiencing it in action. And I think there's a lot of people that have some limited beliefs that are claiming that they've gotten to where they've gotten by doing it the right way. And in reality, if you were to look behind the scenes, you would see that I don't know that they actually, and it's not a wrong way just because they got help, but like we have to acknowledge, like, if I'm walking a path and I'm doing things mostly on my own, then that's going to be very different than somebody has a emotionally balanced, supportive family that gives them good advice from the birth canal. Like, it's very different. I've had to take time out to revise myself, recover and rest, and then try to learn life all over again at the age of 47, while I'm still trying to be supportive to my kids. And I have 2 dogs that I've taken on during that time of trauma where I'm still feeling overwhelmed at times. And to be honest, like I said, like, pets and babies are not meant to be comfort blankets for humans. And this is something I've had to learn. I think some people think it just takes money to raise kids, money and food. And you gotta, like, the material needs, like, we just gotta provide materially for our kids, and like, say good morning to them once in a while, and they'll do our chores, and they'll show up at social events and make us look good. But like, there's so much more to engaging and connecting with your children. And I'm gonna do another video about that as well, how I revised that and how I recognized that I was with different intention but similar to parenting like my parents. So when you start to get all this clarity and why you're doing what you're doing, and what it's actually creating in your life and what it's not creating in your life, that clarity is where it removes the emotion. And so I had to get real with, like, it's kind of like, so like, as long as I would use like junk food and ice cream to comfort myself when I worked really hard, and I told myself I deserve a reward, but that reward removes all the hard work that I just did. So if I do hard work and I work in the yard and then I fall back on ice cream, it removes all the exercise I just did, because I'm still, if you understand, it takes longer than you anticipate to recover from insulin resistance. It's not just revising your diet. For me, I'm learning, like, I have to engage my muscles to burn through the sugars of the natural foods, let alone any sort of junk food. And so, things take longer than anticipated. And once you get into the action, you're going to recognize, wow, this is taking way longer. And you still have kind of the hope of spirituality, like something's going to happen like a miracle. But that's my experience, has not been any sort of real miracles of money where I can now renovate my home and buy new furniture and buy the food that I want and go out and update my closet. Like, I've only been awarded the money, like I've been able to come up mentally with the money that covers my living expenses and resources. You know, where I live, there are things that have been provided and are here. And I'm grateful for those things, but at the same time, some of those things that are just meant to be seasonal and not long term, because I can notice like the dysfunction within them as well. And so it's more of a resting zone instead of a building spot. And so, yeah, some of these things is just, if you knew it's going to take you, this is one thing, like you think it's going to take you, 1 year, anticipate 5 years. That's, to expect it to take longer is better than hoping that it's going to happen faster, because that's kind of that emotional, I need this to happen emotionally for me to feel safe. But there's things like there's belief systems that you're tied into that you're safe, just not in the way that you want to be. Like you can be still safe and secure, but you're like, well, I want to be safe and secure on a new couch. That sounds wonderful, but I currently have 2 cover cushions missing from this couch. I have a rip in it. It's a great couch, but it's got feathers that come out of it all the time, and it's high maintenance. And I love the pillows for different reasons, but if I were to choose an actual different couch, I would choose a different one, because like one with covers, so visually it's more appealing to me, and I don't see that. Like I like more of a smooth. When I look at my house, I like things to kind of work together and be aesthetically pleasing to the eye. And I keep a blanket on it, and that's fine. It works. And now I can clean the blanket if it gets dirty from me taking a rest right out of the garden, because I do that. I don't always shower when I come out of the garden. It's dirt, I'll be okay. If some people don't like that, I don't know what to tell you. But the blanket is covered in my dirt and probably some sweat. The dogs are up here. And so it makes sense to cover that blanket. And so if I had a new couch right now, I'd just be covering it with a blanket anyways. So there's kind of things that you have to kind of revise at this time. There's some things that you, like, in order to clear up your karma and your mess and get more consistent and remove the distractions and create more organization and consistency and discipline, like, you're still going to be messy through the process. So sometimes things aren't happening for you right now. And it's because if those things were to happen for you right now, how would you manage that? You've already got too much on your plate, and you're still having to clean up your karmic mess and revise and remove things from your plate, not add more onto it. Because now you're going to be like, if you're not into these habits yet, then you're just going to wreck new stuff. And why would you waste your money on new stuff if you don't know how to take care of the old stuff? And this is why I like buying things new. It's interesting, like, I have neighbors, and I know the previous neighbors, he fixed up the whole home. And he used to maintain the yard, and he was very, like, he took care of that home. He renovated it, but he also in the same time was cutting the lawn, keeping it nice. He kept his side of the lawn clean, and often. And the new people who live there, you can see they're just going to wreck all the shit that he built there, because they don't know how to take care of a home. I don't know. When I first met them, and I assumed they came from an apartment because of the way they couldn't keep up with the housework, not the housework, but the yard work. And so for me, I recognize if I leave something to go too long, I'm going to be the one that has to clean it up. So there's a real lack of accountability when I've had to discuss certain issues with them regarding our property line. So I can only imagine what between the two of them it looks like inside the household, and that they have this beautiful home, but the reality of that beautiful home maintaining and remaining a beautiful home with people who don't know how to care for it, and they don't know how to care for other people or themselves, like, the reality of that situation is they're just going to destroy what was new anyways. And so, sometimes that's just it's a lesson in life. It's like, if you have kids, why would you buy new furniture just so they can throw up on it? It doesn't make sense. And, like, I've thought about that too. Like, while I want a new home, like, even when my kids are here, they're not always considerate and cleaning up directly after themselves, because they are working through some other stuff. And so, like, for me, I'm like, I clean what I can, but at the same time, I'm like, if I had brand new stuff and it got dirty, I'd be upset too. So it's kind of like it'll happen when it's meant to happen. The furniture that I have is comfortable. I can rest on it. I sit here, I can do my videos on it. So what I have now is all that I need. And even though I want more at times, that impatience comes when I have to recognize I have enough. Right now I have enough. I don't need more. I got a lot more than some other people have, and it's not because I didn't work for it. I worked for this. I worked for things. And so I just stopped giving to people and I started keeping for myself. So instead of giving to other people, now I'm making time for them. I'll rest. I spend a lot of time resting. And I give myself the permission to grieve and cry and stop judging myself and recognizing like I have taken on decades of pain, painful patterns, painful people, painful experiences. And so it's going to take time for me to purge all that and relearn new ways of existing and being. So like, I don't know, I might try to make more detailed videos if you guys want. If you have questions, let me know and I can try to make more detailed videos with things that you might be struggling that you think I could help you with. You can put that in the comments, or I do have an email. I got to start putting my description into the videos again. But that email is based on business and not a personal interaction. So if it's related to the channel and it's something that we're going to talk about on the channel, that's fine. I'm not looking to connect with people through my email at this time unless it's business. So I won't be responding to emails that are not business associated. So yeah, I'm going to end it there. I think that's pretty clear. Like the more logic I got, the less emotional I got. So like when, oh, sorry, no, I'm not done. I had to look at the why. Why was I doing stuff? But I also had to look at the like, as long as I continued to engage in these certain dynamics, it would make me feel like anxious, and it felt like I was still tiptoeing around other people's feelings, even though they were willing to make me uncomfortable. It's so weird. Like I've had someone comment on my videos and it was very uncomfortable, and it's not from a lack of communicating, because I've been very clear. I think I gave this person more chances than not to let them know I'm not interested romantically in them or in anyone, but I'm not. If I wanted to, I would, and if I haven't, then I'm not. And if I don't reach out to create more conversation with you, it's not a right now, it's a never. I don't see value in us connecting. I just think we're too far apart from where we're at in life, and this has nothing to do with money, but it has something to do with that as well, because that is part of life. And I'm looking for a partner that I can work with, not pull around. That's not fair to me. For all the work that I've done, and if some people can't see that, this is the problem I have. Some people don't want to say the painful part out loud, that they're not compatible with you. They had not done enough internal work to be matched with you. And that could be friendships, that can be romantic partners, but some people don't want to acknowledge that. And so like if you were to call them out for that, they're not going to acknowledge it. And then they're going to make you the bad guy. So like that's not my responsibility. That's not my emotionality. I don't give a shit. Like if you got to figure that out the hard way, figure it out. But it's not my job. I can't be responsible for your delusion and mine. You know, I got to figure out my own. So, as long as I was giving to people out of guilt and because I felt bad for them, that was getting me into trouble. And so I had to start taking care of myself, because when I'm giving out of guilt and I'm helping someone because I feel bad for them, that is putting them down below and me up here, and that is a different pedestal. But at the same time, these people have not grown to do what they need to do. So this is an example would be like, I would meet shy guys and shy people, and so like I would reach out and say hello because I was trying to be a friendly face, because I sensed like something was off with them, like they weren't happy, right? So I thought, you know, everyone can use a friendly face, but I had to get to the point where some people take that friendly face and they twist it into something it's not. And so I had to like revise my friendly face, because some people just take it and use it and abuse it, right? And so that showed me, like, I don't ever want to feel sorry for a man. Like, you're grown. You got everything that I've created for myself, everyone has access to. So if you're not doing something, it's because you're not doing it. You got to figure out why. And it's in the action where you learn. So if you're not taking action and keep trying, that's you. That's a you. I can't get you into the game. I can't bring you out here and be like, hey, let's play basketball. If you're too insecure to take a shot, and we're playing, say we're playing, I play soccer. So like I had to take shots, and there's a time when I ran up to, I had the ball, I finally like could control the ball enough, and I was ready to take my first goal, and I went to go bring my leg back and kick, and I didn't have the the swing cleared, so my toe kicked the turf, and I totally went like and fell flat. It was very embarrassing. It was the first time I actually had an intentional goal in mind to go up and actually not react to the ball, but take the ball up to the net and kick the ball. And that was the first time, and I fell flat on my face. So like, do you think I'm not going to go back up there and kick the ball again? Of course I am. I'm going to fight. I fight for everything. I fight for me. I fight for my loved ones. And when I'm on a team, I fight for that team. And so if I'm on a team and they're not fighting for me, that is unfair. If I'm on a team and you don't have my back like I have yours, that is an unfair advantage. That is a high risk. That is not compatibility, and that is unfair to expect me to stay around you when you don't have boundaries with anybody, and I'm sitting here like calling people out left, right, and center, holding people accountable, while you're inviting them in through the back door to stab me in the back. That's just not a fair give and take. And so I had to start recognizing, like, when I feel bad for somebody and I feel guilty, that is not a reason to run in. That is a reason to let them grow and find my crew. And so some people don't like the sounds of that. I give where I can. I've given in my life, so it's not to say I'm not a giver. It's not like and some people will want to twist that and say, well, you don't deserve, because I go to, I've frequented at the community kitchen. I get help at the food bank. You know, I'm on social works right now. And so people will say, well, you're being given to, why don't you give back? There are periods when you're meant to give and periods when you're not. And if you can't understand that, then the problem is with you. And so you got to recognize when people don't want you to rest, it means they don't give themselves permission to rest. And so like if I'm resting and I feel people are overworking their system with substances or people and environments and belief systems, we are not an equal match. And so I had to learn to walk away from that. And it was the emotion of feeling guilty, because in childhood I was made to feel guilty, and that kept me connected to my parents. And that was the intention. They wanted me to feel bad for them to keep me close so they could keep having someone to emotionally dump on, or have somebody there instead of having nobody. And to me, the nobody is better than the somebody, because the nobody's, you know, having nobody, I was like, I'm responsible now. And that has really got me to hit hard and really force myself to make the changes and grow where it was very uncomfortable. It's created a lot of growing pains, and that's painful, and it's having to do the thing you don't want to do, but you have to do it. And so when you put yourself in a position of life to line yourself up with those, you have no option but to either do it or fail and keep learning. You have no, it's not, there's rest days, and there's, you know, you can learn how to quit certain things, but your true path and where you're going, like making money, building wealth, you have no choice but to keep going, because once you put yourself in there, yeah, there's no going back. You can't go, you just can't. So and that has helped me get better with numbers. I'm coming back to myself, where before I couldn't, my memory was fucked up. You know, I was paranoid. I was constantly feeling like hopeless and helpless, and I thought other people were controlling my life. Well, they had affected my life. My mind is rising above who they are and reminding me of who I am, and how their little stones that they're throwing are actually useless. And if they actually want to come for a face-to-face confrontation, I'll let them know exactly who they are and who they aren't. That does not happen. They work behind the scenes. They get other people to do their dirty work. These are flying monkeys. And you just have to remove the emotional attachment to that and realize, like, I have power, I have choice, and I don't have to choose to invest in that sort of fear-mongering and that group, you know, bullying. And I have all the receipts, and I've got all the information. So if these people want to keep coming at you, coming at me, it's just a matter of time before I just release shit. I don't care. I don't care anymore. I'm not afraid. I don't care what you're going to do. I know that whatever I do, I know I've developed within me the tools that I need to, and the strength and the resilience to go where I need to go. And so like these people now don't have any power with me, you know? And so I would love for them to come at me again, because at the same time, it's just like, I'm at the point, like, if you want to try to make me lose my house, what do you think I'm going to do when I lose my house? Do you think I'm not going to figure something out? Like, you just got to understand, these people have no real power over you. And these people, I'm talking about emotional and mental abuse. Now, the physical abuse, I've had very small experiences with that, and so I can't speak much on that right now, but I have had some touches of physical abuse, and I've had it with women when I was younger, you know, who were targeting me and wanted to fight me, and you know, things like that. And things haven't really changed. Women just do it differently, and they're equally as toxic as some of these men. So it's not men, it's not all men, it's like people out there. Once you recognize that and you get good with that, the emotion is removed, and you just don't, like I said, you just don't give a shit anymore. It's just not that deep. It's not that deep. I don't need you to reconnect. And that the discard has been the biggest blessing to me, because it allowed me that space to look at them and be like, what did I want with them anyways? You know, when you look at that ex, you're like, ugh, what was I thinking? Like, what did they have to offer? Nothing. Like, the sex wasn't even good. You know what? They weren't even that attractive. What did I, like, they had built something to convince you that there was somebody that they weren't. The reason why I stayed with some of these people was because I thought they were warm and cuddly and kind, and they aren't. They're strategic. They're manipulative. They're cold. They're cruel, and they're gross. Oh, gross. It's like garbage can energy. And once you start seeing that, you're just like, why did I feel bad for this person? Like, they're just not. And they're gonna try to convince you that they're sort of victims, and they're just like working through life, and that, you know, their life is challenging too. But like, when you see them for who they are, they're victimizing other people. They're going after vulnerable people in vulnerable sectors, and so they are no victim of unless of their own abuse. Like, you know what, you can be abused, but once you become the abuser, that's something else. That's something you gotta be responsible for that in yourself. That's something you gotta change. You can't blame that on the abuser. You know, once we become one of them, and you know, I've had elements where I've been abusive to my kids emotionally, and I had to acknowledge that. You know, I've had my moments where, you know, I've been unhinged, and I had to apologize for my kids, and I've had to not. It wasn't really an apology. It was like I had to acknowledge that this is who I am, and this is, and then I recognize when it happens, what triggers me. Maybe I'll do a different video about that. And then I had to change, because I realized, like, my kids deserve so much better. And even though they're tolerating it, that doesn't mean that I can just, like, that's just me. No, my kids deserve the best. I deserve the best. We're not going to settle for breadcrumbs and bullshit. It's just not who we are. And that's not who you are if you're watching this. So keep it moving. Keep it growing. Like and subscribe. Comment. I'd like to hear from who's watching this. And I'll see you in the next one. Okay, thanks for watching, guys. Thank you for your support. There are ways you can support me in the description financially if you're comfortable and capable. I'd love it. If not, that's okay too. A like goes a long way. A comment goes a long way. But it is important to, if you do feel like you're benefiting from this content, it is helpful for you to give back in some form. That's just how the world is meant to work. Even though it doesn't always work like that, we can make a change and we can do things different. So if you're benefiting from this, you know, a like is helpful. So I'll see you in the next one, guys. Thank you for watching, and take care. Hi guys, today I want to make a video about fast energy. So fast energy for me is emotional, it's fearful, and it's doing something quickly because you're scared to take your time doing the thing that you actually need to be doing. And so fast energy is falling back into old patterns, going back to old people. This is going back to something that's easy. This is like going back to a certain job environment, or even if it's like a different building, but it's the same. Like for me, example is like going back in the factory world, doing it the same way as I did before without asking the right questions. Because for me, when I start asking the hard questions in my just connections with people, whether it be like platonic, you know, someone I meet on the street, you know, just when I start asking questions, that's usually when I've had the discard happen from people. It's usually when I get the silence. It's when I don't get the call back. And so for me, I need to know that I'm going to be respected in a space, and I need to know that that person, that environment knows how to treat me properly. And that they're going to respect what I bring to the table, and that they can see the value that I have, not just to use and abuse me, but to want to grow together as a group in a fair exchange of resources, time, and energy, right? And so anytime that I've felt like I need money and I have to go back into like a factory setting or something, have I learned from that environment? Yes, I have. And I get better recognizing what's going on, you know, while I'm in there. But the idea for me is like you're trying to protect yourself emotionally, mentally, but also financially, because when you go into these environments and you're kind of like, okay, I already knew that, why did I go back there? It's like I needed a reminder. But you're also like, I think it is necessary sometimes to repeat certain patterns until we get the lesson. That's what we need to do. But there are times also where I've learned that I was showing up in sort of a prey energy, then I was really putting myself in front of predators or predatory behavior and or opportunists, you know. And so I had to instead of just showing up in my, smaller, softer version, I had to stand up in my more fuller, authentic but solid version, which means asking the hard questions and being okay not being chosen. And so I had a lot of experience doing this with relationships, romantic and family members, and just friendships. And like, it's actually the people that were closest to me. When I started speaking up my full truth and calling them out for their bad behavior, this is where I had a lot of people discard me and move away from me. And at first it was really painful, but when I realized and I gave myself time to actually see the painful truth of our dynamic, it realized like I was not. So it's interesting. Sometimes manipulators and opportunists will give you something. It's kind of like, when you have those people who they'll like, here, download my free email. You just have to sign up with your email. And then after that, they spam you with all this stuff. That's kind of what it is. It's like they'll give you something free, but it's in order to keep you in line with them. And the thing is, they're also going to use that one thing that they gave you in the expectation to put up with their bad behavior and their abuse, but also they're expecting to take something from you later down the line. So this is like, I've had people that help me move, and I think the intention is like, I helped you move, so at some point I have access to your home because your home is now my home. And I've never had those conversations quite yet, but I have had before that. And when I was close to these people, like they lacked boundaries and privacy, and even private conversations that I'd had with them. This is family, friends, coworkers, people that I just gave my trust over too soon. They would use that information against me. And to be honest, once you dealt with your shadow aspect, which I'll do a video on about that, you don't actually, that stuff doesn't hurt you anymore, because a lot of people wanted you to feel shame for certain things that they might feel shame for, and they think you should feel shame for. But in reality, they haven't lived your life, and they're leading, they're kind of like steering their boat from a different end, because they don't have the experience, they don't have the trauma, and they don't have the insight and the hurt that you do. And so it's going to be different. There's people that behave similarly to you, but are very different in intention. And so that's one thing I also had to recognize was like different employers, different people have different intentions. And so when you start asking those hard questions and holding them accountable, and not only, sometimes I don't even have to ask the hard questions. I've had to get really so much better with removing, like, I've been judged harshly in life by people who thought I was naive, gullible, easy to take advantage of. And it wasn't, there were times when they would lie right to my face, and I just didn't bother to call them out, because I'm just like, okay. And at one time, I didn't really know that was a big deal, because I just thought, like, I'm not perfect, so neither are they. So I was making excuses for their bad behavior, but I had to learn how to define what are mistakes and what is repeated abusive behavior. So when I got more clarity, that was helpful.